people hear of me, the more happier they are. Action. Okay, we got a thumbs up. So, good evening. Appreciate everybody taking a little bit of their time this evening to come out and find out more about question 1 on the ballot coming November 6th. I'm Matt Koppler. I'm the town manager here in Enfield. And I'm going to real quick introduce some of the different people that will be a part of this evening. Over to my right, we have Dean Petruccelli. He's with Petruccelli Silver or Silver Petruccelli? Silver Petruccelli. Well, you're here, so we'll put you first. And we also have Chris Nardi with the firm as well here this evening. We have Tim Neville, who is the board chairman. And in the back, standing looking very distinguished, we have Dr. Schumann, the superintendent. And next to him, we have a board member. I can't... Gina, I'm sorry. My eyesight, that distance, no good. And we have Chris Drezik, I believe, and this year you are the assistant superintendent. See, who did I miss? Anybody else want to raise their hand? Oh, Tony Letizio, the business manager for the Board of Education. And we're also going to have Randy Daigle come up here and say a few words as well. To kind of give you an overview of this evening, we're going to do some brief presentations to give you a flavor of what the referendum's all about in terms of the renovations at Enfield High. And then we're going to split up, and we have different areas set up here in the multi-purpose room that will have different officials floating around to be able to answer the questions you may have about the referendum. Hopefully we'll be able to give you the information you need to make a choice when you go into the voting booth November 6th. Because we're being filmed, I also want to point out this is the first of 2 open houses we're going to have. The next one will be October 29th at 7 p.m. in the cafeteria at Enfield High. So with that being said, we're going to get right into the presentation. First, Mr. Neville would like to say a few words. Do you want to come up and address everyone?
Good evening. I just want to say a couple of words here. I think there's a lot of discussion about this in the community. I think people are calling us up and asking us why we're not being more vocal about it. One of the reasons is that we can't. I think as you folks know that. We'd be happy to discuss it with anybody personally and talk about the facts. We want you to get the facts and deal with any rumors. I know I've been following Facebook for the last couple of weeks here and looking at the discussion, which is very, very good. It's nice to see a strong discussion about this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstandings, I think, out there, so I'm appreciative that you folks are here tonight to get the facts from these folks and to ask any questions that you have. I would encourage people to call us up personally, email us. They're all online here. We'll be happy to give you any information we can, because this is too important a decision right now to base it on the wrong information or misinformation. So thank you for coming. I would encourage you, as Matt said, that to come to the one on the 29th, or get your friends and neighbors to come to that so that they can get the answers to their questions as well, so that we can make a intelligent decision on what's going on based on the facts on the November 6th. Thank you for coming, and feel free to see us tonight or give us a call or email us, and we'll be happy to discuss any issues that you have there and give you the most up-to-date information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. I'll ask Randy Daigle. He spent, along with some other individuals in this room, I believe the spring into summer, working on putting together the project for us. So Randy, if you want to address the audience.
Thank you very much. I'm Randy Daigle. I'm chairman of the Tree Consolidation Building Committee. And I just want to say I appreciate it very much that the public being here, and I highly encourage you to ask any questions. The more questions you ask, the more answers get out there. And we have a golden opportunity here that is not going to be long-lived. The window's going to be closing fast. If this does not go through, the reimbursement rate for this town is going to be going down. Cost of construction is at the best it's been in a long time, and we're going to be losing that if it has to take a couple more years to do anything, either it's this or to renovate the 2 schools. The advantage of doing this is that we are at one of the 3rd to 4th best reimbursement rate in the state. We're at almost 72%, 61.9%. It's only going to go down from there. If we have to renovate 2 schools, the percentage of reimbursement is minimum. So we're going to be seriously looking at some taxes increase. So please ask any questions. Afterwards, we're going to be walking around. Again, the more information that we can get out to the public, it's kind of a no-brainer. So it's just the information needs to get out there. So thank you all very much for taking the time tonight.
And now we'll turn the show over to Dean, and he'll guide us through what the project consists of.
Thanks, Matt.
Good evening. Again, Dean Petroselli with Silver Petroselli and Associates. We're a 38-person architectural and engineering firm out of Hamden, Connecticut, and we've been working obviously with the town and with the building committee, the consolidation committee, since the spring, as Randy indicated. And what you're seeing tonight is really a culmination of what we call our feasibility study and our pre-referendum services. Obviously, we were retained by the town to study the consolidation of Fermi into Enfield High. And what you're going to see tonight is really the culmination of those 6 months of effort that our firm, working with the committee, eventually produced as a proposal to the town, and obviously this is what's being brought forward to you folks in terms of the town referendum. I think you all know the facility, so I'm going to walk you briefly through it. I got some photos. I'm going to try to keep this presentation to about 15 or 20 minutes, and obviously we want to give enough time for you folks afterwards to mull around and obviously ask us questions. So we're trying to not make this too formal, but obviously these first 15 minutes will be semi-formal as I try to get through all the information that we want to give you folks tonight. You all know Enfield High. I'm going to refer to the wings as the A wing, which is the academic wing, the B wing, which is the PE, the phys ed, the gymnasium wing, the C wing, which is predominantly the cafeteria and the auditorium, and then the D wing, which is the tech ed and science portion of the facility. I think you all know that this facility was built in the 1960s, pretty much as you see it, although there were some minor renovations in the 90s, and then a significant addition of the media center in 2004. Virtually what we have here is a 50-year-old building that has had very little infrastructure improvements over the years. To the back of the building, obviously the fields, I think you all know the fields are relatively new. So in terms of site development, we are going to include substantial amount of site redevelopment as part of this proposal, but one thing we are not doing is modifying the fields as they are just a few years young. In terms of the existing conditions, obviously the media center is one space that probably in the entire facility needs the least amount of work, just because it is just shy of 10 years old, unlike the rest of the building that's obviously 50 plus years. In terms of the condition, I think you've all been through it, so I won't dwell on these first few photos, but the existing lobby is obviously indicative of what we would see in a 1950s structure, but surely is not sized appropriately for the population that is projected to come in with the consolidation of Fermi into Enfield High School and combining those two populations. We've got toilets and infrastructure that, again, are dated. Many of these spaces have not been modernized, touched. We have original tile from the 1960s on the floor and on the ceilings, on the walls. We are virtually looking at a time capsule here in terms of the existing facility that has had very little improvements over those last 50 years. The gymnasium was always adequately positioned in terms of its location in the building. A little unique in its configuration is that they had a very unique secondary gym that really kind of impacts the primary gym. So what you have is really two insufficient spaces as opposed to one large gymnasium that, again, we feel Enfield High should have. We have locker rooms that if you don't and have not been in them, in terms of the condition of those locker rooms, again, these are spaces that have not been touched. We have boys' locker rooms that have been converted into weight rooms because space did not exist within the existing facility. So we began to steal from spaces over the years to accommodate the changing program. Kitchen, cafeteria, well undersized even for the existing population, never mind the proposed population with Fermi coming over. And same with the cafeteria. Again, it's the original 1960s space. In terms of modernizing, there's been none. More importantly, square footage is insufficient for the proposed population. The auditorium, again, dated from the 1960s, still is a functional space, undersized in terms of the goal of having about 1,100 seats. Right now, there are currently about 600 seats. And probably more importantly is the stage and the production portion of the auditorium. What you're seeing really is the depth of the stage. That curtain is physically the back wall of the stage, so it is very inadequate for performances. And in terms of the performing art type programs, they surely have done the best that they can over the years, but clearly we're at a position or a point in time where the existing infrastructure, the existing architecture, if you will, is no longer appropriate for contemporary 2013 educational standards. The science wing and the D wing, if you've never been in the space, probably dates the building the best in terms of its visual condition. We have very outdated equipment labs, benches, gas and water that no longer works, casework and cabinet doors that the hardware has long since failed, VAT or vinyl asbestos tiles on the floor. And the D-wing, which is worth mentioning, was a very lightly framed structure. Even in the 1960s, when Enfield High was constructed, the D-wing was looked at as a substandard quality space. Its infrastructure, how it was framed, is much different. I'm sure you're all aware of the A-wing, where everything is a cast-in-place concrete structure. A D-wing is a very lightly framed steel structure, and probably wasn't even intended to last the 50 years that it has. So it clearly was intended originally for a much different use than how it's been used in the last 20 or so years. Even the spaces like the auto shop are housed in that D wing. D was never intended to accommodate this program. You can see even the ceiling height is limited, where they can't even raise vehicles high enough to be able to appropriately work underneath them as the cars are going to bottom out on the structure. The space just physically wasn't designed for how the space needs to now be used. And obviously we have an infrastructure. We have a boiler and mechanical equipment. We've got piping, plumbing, electrical systems that are 50 years old. Many of these are still the original systems with the original piping in place and all those original valves. And there really, folks, comes a time, a point when systems can no longer be maintained. There comes a point where they just need to be replaced. And in our opinion, our engineers have combed through this building and feel that a renovate as new or a total gut of these systems is really the only appropriate solution moving forward. One of Silver Petroselli's responsibility was not to just look at the infrastructure, but to look at the program, to determine what spaces. And I don't expect you to read this, and this is actually the last page of a multi-page program. But what we basically concluded was that we have an existing high school in terms of square footage, and what a proposed high school with a proposed program would derive. And that kind of gives us architects the delta, how much square feet of addition that we're going to need. And I don't expect you to read it, but it's just over 300,000 square feet coming off of the 190 of the existing building. So the existing building is about 191,000 square feet, and we have a proposed addition and new building, a total building of about 312. Our executive summary of what Silver Petroselli proposed at the end of our 6-month study was pretty much summarized on this list. We are proposing that we demolish that D-wing, and I'll talk about that a little later of why we're doing that, but mostly because the space is inadequate in terms of its structure, its superstructure, its height. It's elevated off of the C-wing, meaning you have to go up a flight of stairs or a ramp to get to it, and it really does not meet the educational needs that we have for our new program. We also want to talk about square footage as we get later, because we can't just arbitrarily build as much square footage as we want to maximize our state reimbursement. The state maxes out how big your building can be, and everything that we exceed in terms of square footage, we get penalized. So the goal always is to meet the program objective and obviously try to maximize your state reimbursement. As Randy said, you have a very aggressive state reimbursement, and we surely want to capitalize on that. About 70 cents of every dollar spent on this project will be funded by the state of Connecticut, so obviously we're trying to take advantage of that. So the proposal is to demo D-Wing. We talk about this renovate is new, and I can spend 15 minutes just talking about that one subject, but the concept is that if we renovate the existing building as new, as defined by the state of Connecticut, everything that we do to that building is reimbursable. That means if we replace the roof, it's reimbursable. If we replace the windows, they're reimbursable. If we replace the mechanical systems, they're reimbursable. The state, however, says that we have to renovate the entire building. We can't do a portion of it. We can't pick and choose pieces and parts. We have to renovate it and touch every single system to give them at least a minimum of a 20-year lifespan. If you don't do that, then you don't qualify for renovate as new, and all those components, roofs, windows, doors, floors, anything that's considered maintenance by the state would not be reimbursed. So you can understand the complexity and why we analyze the value of renovating a building as new as opposed to just putting on an addition and trying to update all those systems that need to be replaced. We wouldn't get the reimbursement for them. So renovate as new allows us to maximize your reimbursement. Not all buildings are candidates for renovate as new, but because of the age of your building and the age and condition of the systems, it was clearly a winner that renovate as new was going to be a financial benefit as opposed to picking and choosing our renovations. We have some minor renovations of the existing offices and media center. We're proposing to reconfigure the gym and locker rooms. We're obviously proposing to enlarge the auditorium and construct a larger and new stage. In the additions, which are 5 of them, are a new entry lobby, a new 106,000, which is the lion's share of the addition of what's called the STEAM addition, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math. 16,900 of the gymnasium addition, 8,900 of kitchen and calf, and about 14,000 of a new music department. We also are proposing to construct a new bus and drop-off canopy, and along with renovating and modernizing the parking, the bus drop-off, and creating a separate parent drop-off and bus drop-off. Again, we are virtually touching the entire site minus those fields. Obviously, that's the last line. We are reconfiguring the entire school, and you'll see that in some upcoming site plans. This is the site plan as proposed today. We have A wing, B wing, C wing, and D wing, which would be at that location, has been shown taken away in this site plan. The brown is not only the existing building, but also the proposed additions, and I'll talk about that in a moment. This is really to illustrate the extent or the scope of the work on the site. As I indicated, the fields will not have much improvements. Tennis courts will be improved. Again, renovate as new requires us to virtually touch every single component that is used by students. That means from property line in, we have to analyze everything. The fields, being so young, don't need to be modernized, but spaces like the tennis court would need to be modernized in terms of new finishes and new fencing and new lines and new striping and all that. The lion's share of the work on site is obviously an entire reconfiguration of the parking lot. About 615 cars, which is an increase over what you currently have. Again, obviously accommodating the upcoming population. But probably more important is a separate bus drop-off and a separate parent drop-off. Right now there's a collision of buses and cars. I'm sure you're all going to nod your head of understanding what that means when you try to pick up your child at 150. And you're fighting those buses and fighting those vehicles. We obviously, for safety and just for ease of movement through the site, want to separate that bus and parent. Obviously, new plantings, new site, new stripes, new parking, new pavement, new sidewalks, you name it. Everything that's really around the belly of the building is going to be modernized as part of this renovate is new. In terms of the proposed plans, and you'll see these next floor plans, we have 4 levels of this building. We actually have a lower level and then 3 upper levels. This is actually 1 story below grade. As we enter in on the upper level or the main level, the entry is at this location. This is wing A, this is wing B, and on the lower level there is no wing C or D. We are proposing an addition on the left-hand side, which is the 106,000 square foot STEAM addition. On the lower level, it will primarily be tech ed, auto, and wood shop, getting them on the lower level out of the way of the main entry so that those vehicles for the students and delivery of goods are off to the side. The lower level also allowed us to get additional headroom into those shops. which is not the conventional 12 feet of classroom headroom that is needed, but a few extra feet for those auto shop and wood shop programs. The rest of the tech ed in terms of family and consumer science rounds off on the lower level, and we have a few special eds down on the lower level. Again, keep in mind we're modernizing and keeping the entire A, B, and C wing intact, but everything is being modernized as part of Renovate is New, but probably just as important is that we are reshuffling all of the spaces. So what is English today will not be English tomorrow. Everything is being reshuffled so that we're regrouping and reclustering, because over the years the clustering has gotten fractured, and this is obviously the time to bring all the academic clustering back the way it belongs. In terms of the gymnasium, it's very subtle what we're proposing to do, but there's the building notches in at the two corners to create that secondary gym space that I showed in that first photo. What we're proposing is to square off that gym, which allows us to keep the court centered and allows us to get bleachers, full height bleachers on both sides of the court, something you currently don't have the capacity to do. And we can actually fit the entire student population of the combined Fermi and Enfield High in the one gymnasium, a space that you currently today don't have anything near that capacity to be able to fit. We're also proposing to infill the courtyard between the cafeteria and the gym, and that's going to be made up of some PE programs in terms of cardio and weight rooms. There's also going to be some health classrooms that are very much affiliated with the gymnasium, so we chose to put them down. Pretty much everything that you're seeing in that green color is PE related program, which we are putting on the lower level. We've also created a separate entry, something else that doesn't currently exist today, a separate entry for the gymnasium. I'm sure you're all aware that today if there's a gymnasium event, you park in the main lot and you have to kind of work your way through the school, down those stairs and into the gym. We're now on grade creating a second entry just for the gymnasium so that they can have functions off hours without having to traverse through the main body of the school. We also improved the boiler room and the shipping and receiving as we need to increase the size of those spaces as the building is virtually doubling in size. The main level it obviously has the lion's share of the changes in terms of the program. You probably don't even recognize the original building, but it sits right there. There's the edge of A wing, there's the B wing, and then C wing, and obviously D wing is gone. You see it just off to the page there to the bottom. The STEAM Edition, and I'll kind of keep going in a clockwise rotation as I talk about each of these plans. The STEAM Edition is a 3.5 story. It's actually 4 as you saw in the previous, but a story on grade, 2 stories above, and then 1 story below. On the main level, we have the art and the technology portion in that STEAM Edition, and again, that pink is the special ed programs. We are obviously modernizing the entire A wing and moving in academics into that portion of the facility. The office and the guidance pretty much stays intact with very minor renovations. We're increasing the nurse suite. There's some computer labs, and then there's some guidance and career centers that we're creating in that brown space right there. The gymnasium shows up again here because it's a 2-story volume space, but it's virtually a duplicate of what's happening down below. As we infill that courtyard, that 3-sided courtyard between the CAF and the gym on the lower level, we're also infilling it on the main level, which allows us to increase that cafeteria. So we're increasing the cafeteria very efficiently by using a 2-story addition at that location. As I needed the program below for the PE, I also need the program above because your existing CAF is insufficient for the population coming on board. The kitchen also moves. As you know, right now the kitchen is located here and you kind of are able to circulate around the kitchen. It's a neat concept in the 1960s, but practically speaking, trying to move goods into the kitchen and garbage out of the kitchen with it not being on a perimeter wall has proven to be a challenge for the educators, and they asked if they can have a loading dock, which is not a lot for them to ask for a kitchen of this size, to have a kitchen on the perimeter so that we can get loading into that kitchen. We can move goods and services into that. Obviously dry goods and refrigerator and freezer spaces. Refrigerator and freezers will be brought up with the remainder or the balance of them being on the lower level as they are today. The auditorium in yellow gets a significant increase in size. We are not enlarging the width of the space, and we're actually taking over the last end space, which is currently the music wing right now, or the music room at the end of the auditorium, and we're turning that into the stage. So we increased the size of the auditorium, and we obviously design a stage with fly space above so that we can obviously lift scenery. It'll be surely a state-of-the-art facility in terms of the amenities that go along with a auditorium and stage for a 21st century high school. In the purple is the music department. We intentionally put music next to auditorium because those two programs relate so close to each other. But also with music comes a lot of noise, and we always want to separate the music department from the academics, and you can surely understand why we chose to put music down at the C wing and separate it as far away from the A and the STEAM wing as possible. On the second level, A wing, B wing. B wing is the existing media center. We are not proposing to change that location, and there'll be very minor renovations as part of this project, again, because the media center is only 9 years old. A wing gets, again, modernized in terms of all of the classrooms, and we're putting entire academic departments in that space. We're putting an entire the math academic department in the STEAM second floor, and those off-red colors are the first of 2 floors of the science wing. We have 16 science classrooms. They're virtually all CLABs, which are combination classroom laboratories, and they occur on the 2nd and on the 3rd floor. So on the 3rd floor, the STEAM edition, again, is the predominant space on this level, as we have the balance of those science. And then we round off with social studies, and then we have reading and some language arts in the existing A wing. So you can kind of see in the plan of how we're able to regroup all of those academics and obviously bring them all together. A lot of care was given in terms of math wanting to be adjacent to science and all those adjacencies that surely have been fractured over the years, but with the opportunity with a new building gives us an opportunity to reposition all of these classrooms. So you can surely see in the blue and in the reds how we were able to accommodate all of those individual academics. I'm sure you've all seen the renderings. These are renderings that we developed as part of the feasibility. They were really meant as a quick visual of really where we were proposing these additions. We never want folks to necessarily hold us hard and fast to these concepts. It is showing you what we believe the STEAM edition could look like, but there are many months of design and production that our architects and engineers have to go through to get to the final product in terms of a set of documents. These are very preliminary to show you folks where we're proposing the additions, how we're thinking, how the academics work, how we can get these wings to work, how we construct phasing. All of that hopefully is answered, but this surely gives you an idea of what we're thinking, what the scale of the building is going to be. I'm sure you all recognize that A wing of the 3-story academic wing that currently exists. You'll see that new entry in the same location as the current lobby. Obviously the STEAM edition is much unique or very different of what you're used to seeing, and probably more unique is the music suite that kind of bookends this building. So we added to the left, we added to the right, and in plan you saw why we were doing that in terms of those adjacencies. These are just some closer views. It gives you a sense of, again, what we're thinking in terms of the architecture. We did pay a lot of attention that we're strong believers that the architecture should express what goes on behind it. Science and technology wants to be a little more techie feeling in terms of its architecture. The music wants to be obviously suggestive of what is happening behind its walls and roofs. So obviously the architecture, at least the attempt of us architects to express some of that program that was happening behind. We generate these in our computer, so we can obviously spit off different views, and we can virtually look at this building every which way. This is a view looking just at the STEAM edition on your left with the A wing in the distance. This is kind of more of an aerial view overlooking that STEAM edition. You can see where the lower level, 4th floor, comes into play as we take advantage of the grades that are dropping off on this side of the building that allow us to get in those overhead doors for the wood shop delivery and also for the auto mech, as obviously the students and staff will need to be being able to access that space with their vehicles. As I indicated, we wanted to keep that away from the main circulation and the main site development in the front of the building, and that worked out well in terms of those grades. This gives you a little better view of that 4-story building that's going to happen on that south side of the site as we put in that STEAM addition. In terms of the material, again, it may be early to talk about it, but we're obviously looking to pay homage to the original building built in the 1960s with its kind of brutal architecture, but we did a little spin on that in terms of those white columns, but instead of using a lot of heavy masonry, we're looking at a combination of some masonry with some metal panels, again, to kind of suggest some of the techie programs that are happening behind those walls. The music suite has a very different vocabulary in terms of its architecture, and again, we're trying to suggest the programs that happen behind those spaces. And these are just some different views around the site. So kind of in summary, and I'll go over a little bit of the cost and a little bit of the square footage. We have an existing building that's made up of first, second, and third floor with the lower level at about 191,000 square feet. We are proposing to demo that D-wing, which is about 26,000 square feet, which gives us an existing area of 164,000. We then add the additions in the green at 147,000, so we are almost doubling after we take away D-wing. We take 164, we add 147, and we come up with a total building, a total developed building at 312,500. One of our responsibility was also to look at the phasing. The phasing of this building is going to have to be very carefully analyzed, and Chris and I have already begun to look at it. Obviously, until a contractor or a construction manager is on board, the phasing will never be finalized, but at least in the early stage, we analyzed how this building could be constructed, because there was a lot of questions from folks of is our student going to have to move, and how are you going to be able to build while the students are occupying? When is Fermi going to come over? All of those questions needed to be answered, and we began to look at the phasing. We are proposing that it's going to take at least between now and the summer of 2014 to develop your final documents, assuming that referendum is approved. It's going to take at least a year of development with the architects and engineers and construction managers and all the folks that are involved on the design and the production side, and that we believe that by the summer of 2014 we can begin construction. The beauty of this project in terms of phasing is that we are virtually doubling the amount of classrooms. So what we have the luxury for, and most high schools don't have this luxury, is what we call swing space. Swing space is that space that's needed to be able to house the children while buildings are being built. Many towns go to portables, where they'll move students into the portables to free up the classrooms so they can do the build. In this case, the STEAM edition itself is going to have more classrooms than the academic A wing does. So obviously building STEAM, or building the STEAM wing first, makes the most sense in terms of phasing. Keep in mind that Fermi is not going to move over until the end of the project, so all we're dealing with is the population of Enfield High. We also chose the locations of the addition so that we have minimal disruption of the students. So everything in gray is the existing building. You see D-wing is still up. We don't take D down because we still need it, because for the first year we're constructing STEAM and we're infilling the courtyard and constructing that PE department. Summer of 15, we renovate the gym and do the gym additions. We take advantage of those critical summer months. When the students are out of the building, we have a lot more flexibility of when we can build. As you see, STEAM and the infill addition are still occurring. By winter 2016, the STEAM addition is complete. We now have swing space, new classrooms. We can then take down D-wing, because all these students have now already been relocated to the STEAM addition. And we can then begin renovations in the academic A-wing. By the spring of 2016, STEAM is complete, gym is complete. We're still renovating those 3 floors of A-wing, and then we can obviously begin the renovations in the auditorium and begin the construction of the music while the continuation of the cafeteria infill continues. By 2016, we're now renovating all of the existing A, B, and C wing, and obviously the music continues. Winter of 2016, 2017, the cafeteria is now complete. We're still on the 3rd floor of the academic wing, and we're still in the middle of the renovations to the auditorium and the construction of the music. And by 2017, we are 100% complete. And for the September 2017 academic school year, Fermi can now come in and fill in those balance of those unoccupied or those unused classroom spaces that have now just recently been renovated. So it's a 7-phase approach. That starts from 2014 all the way through the summer of 2017. Space standards, this is the analysis that the state requires us to compute how much your reimbursement's going to be. As I indicated, as we add square footage to a building, we have to be careful not to exceed significantly what the state will maximum reimburse. Based on the calculations of your student population, we have calculated that the maximum square footage that the state will reimburse is 298,000 square feet. Keep in mind we're just slightly over that 312. That gives us a 95.48% reimbursement. That's not your total dollar reimbursement. That's the percentage of reimbursement for your eligible amount of reimbursement. What that means in terms of dollars, this chart kind of summarizes it the best, is that we have what we call limited eligible, ineligible, and eligible construction costs. There's always going to be a portion of spaces that are ineligible. We are showing about $2.5 million of ineligible construction. Limited eligibility, believe it or not, things like the bleachers in your gymnasium, the state only reimburses you 50% of your maximum amount because they assume that the public uses that a percentage of the time, and therefore if it's not 100% for students, it's not 100% reimbursed. So there's some quirky subtleties where the state manipulates when spaces or when programs are eligible or ineligible. But as you can see, the lion's share of your project is in the eligible category. Of the $103 million, $99 million of it is eligible, so there's $4 million of it that is not. As Randy indicated, you're one of the highest towns in the state in terms of your reimbursement rate at about 70%. You get a very minor space penalty, as we've just exceeded that 298 number from the previous slide. So therefore the Connecticut share, what is covered by the state of Connecticut, is about $68 million, and what is covered by the town of Enfield for this proposed $103 million project is about $31 million. So of the $103 million, again, about 30 cents on the dollar is going to be on the taxpayers of Enfield. The 70 cents on every dollar spent, plus or minus, is obviously coming from the state of Connecticut. And kind of as the last slide, folks are asking about the schedule. I think I talked a little bit about what the build is going to be. Everything in gray has already happened. Obviously, we've started with this project back in January. All of these in terms of getting through the state, getting through the building committee, obviously filing our paperwork with the state, working with bond counsel to set the resolutions. All of that is now behind us. You can see the dates that all of that occurred. The referendum is obviously scheduled in November. And then what you see in yellow, while it's only 4 lines, obviously takes us from 2012 through 2017. But as I indicated, the architects are going to take through the middle of 2014 to design this project. That goes up to the state, and once they give approval to go out to bid, we believe a July 2014 start date and about an August 30th, 2017, as our phasing showed, as an end date. And with that, I'm sure I probably exceeded 20 minutes, but we had a lot to go through.
Matt? Thank you. Dean, thank you very much for that thorough presentation. We appreciate it. Before we break up into small groups to have any questions, hopefully provide answers, I'm going to call forward Mayor Copen to say a few words before we start the question period.
Thank you, Matt. I too just want to thank you for coming out here this evening to learn about the referendum. It's a very important question that the council has put forward to the voters. And just to give you a little perspective, this has been a 3-4 year process that's gotten us to this point. And the town council, the Board of Education, whether it be majority Republican, majority Democrat, everyone's been working together to achieve a common goal over this 4-year period. And all of our votes, all of our decisions have been unanimous. So your elected leaders fully support this referendum question. We put together what we feel was a very dynamic pre-referendum consolidation committee. Again, trying to find balance between party affiliation, no affiliation, male, female, residents with kids in the school system, and residents without. So really, my message to you is that this, we feel, was a very collaborative, fair process. We feel that this does bring Enfield's education forward and is so important and necessary because of a lot of the other items or reactions that may happen if this referendum doesn't pass. Yes, it's expensive. It's $31 million in a bad economy. But we also feel through advice and information that we received from the town manager and the finance director that the town of Enfield is in a good financial position to take on this $31 million in debt because we're retiring other bonds that we've had over the course of time. So one project folds into another. It is an increase to the town, but we feel we can manage it, we can absorb it. And so my message to you was simply, thanks for being here tonight, but know that those that you've put into positions to make these decisions have been working together, have been unanimous in our decisions, and fully support the referendum in November and the consolidation of the two high schools. So again, thanks for being here this evening.
Yep. Scott, thank you very much. We are now going to end the presentation phase, and we'll break up. We'll have the different staff members and representatives from the architect firm around. Please feel free to mosey around, look at the different pictures in the room, and ask questions, because that's what we're here for. So thank you very much for attending, and look forward to your questions.